Episode 136.
There aren't many who'd have let you hire werewolves or keep Hagrid or decide what to teach your students without reference to the ministry. But if you're going to work against me...
The only one against whom I intend to work, said Dumbledore, is Lord Voldemort. If you are against him, then we remain, Cornelius, on the same side. It seemed Fudge could think of no answer to this. He rocked backward and forward on his small feet for a moment and spun his bowler hat in his hands. Finally, he said, with a hint of a plea in his voice,
"He can't be back, Dumbledore! He just can't be!"
Snape strode forward past Dumbledore, pulling up the left sleeve of his robes as he went. He stuck out his forearm and showed it to Fudge, who recoiled. "There," said Snape harshly. "There, the dark mark. It is not as clear as it was an hour or so ago, when it burnt black, but you can still see it. Every Death Eater has the sign burnt into him by the Dark Lord. It was a means of distinguishing each other, and his means of summoning us to him. When he touched the mark of any Death Eater, we were to disapparate and apparate instantly at his side. This mark has been growing clearer all year. Karkaroff's, too. Why do you think Karkaroff fled tonight? We both felt the mark burn. We both knew he had returned. Karkaroff fears the Dark Lord's vengeance. He betrayed too many of his fellow Death Eaters to be sure of a welcome back into the fold." Fudge stepped back from Snape, too. He was shaking his head. He did not seem to have taken in a word Snape had said. He stared, apparently repelled, at the ugly mark on Snape's arm, then looked up at Dumbledore and whispered, "I don't know what you and your staff are playing at, Dumbledore, but I have heard enough. I have no more to add. I will be in touch with you tomorrow, Dumbledore, to discuss the running of this school. I must return to the ministry." He had almost reached the door when he paused. He turned around, strode back down the dormitory, and stopped at Harry's bed. "Your winnings," he said shortly, taking a large bag of gold out of his pocket and dropping it onto Harry's bedside table. 1,000 galleons. There should have been a presentation ceremony, but in the circumstances... He crammed his bowler hat onto his head and walked out of the room, slamming the door behind him. The moment he had disappeared, Dumbledore turned to look at the group around Harry's bed. "There is work to be done," he said. "Molly, am I right in thinking that I can count on you and Arthur?" "Of course you can," said Mrs. Weasley. She was white to the lips, but she looked resolute. He knows what Fudge is. It's Arthur's fondness for muggles that has held him back at the ministry all these years. Fudge thinks he lacks the proper wizarding pride." "Then I need to send a message to him," said Dumbledore. "All those that we can persuade of the truth must be notified immediately, and Arthur is well placed to contact those at the ministry who are not as short-sighted as Cornelius." "I'll go to Dad," said Bill, standing up. "I'll go now." "Excellent," said Dumbledore. "Tell him what has happened. Tell him I will be in direct contact with him shortly. He will need to be discreet, however. If Fudge thinks I am interfering at the ministry..." "Leave it to me," said Bill. He clapped a hand on Harry's shoulder, kissed his mother on the cheek, pulled on his cloak, and strode quickly from the room. "Minerva," said Dumbledore, turning to Professor McGonagall, "I want to see Hagrid in my office as soon as possible. Also, if she will consent to come, Madame Maxime." Professor McGonagall nodded and left without a word. "Poppy," Dumbledore said to Madame Pomfrey, "would you be very kind and go down to Professor Moody's office where I think you will find a house elf called Winky in considerable distress. Do what you can for her and take her back to the kitchens. I think Dobby will look after her for us." "Very well," said Madame Pomfrey, looking startled, and she too left. Dumbledore made sure that the door was closed, and that Madame Pomfrey's footsteps had died away before he spoke again. "And now," he said, "it is time for two of our number to recognize each other for what they are. Sirius, if you would resume your usual form." The great black dog looked up at Dumbledore, then, in an instant, turned back into a man. Mrs. Weasley screamed and leapt back from the bed. "Sirius Black!" she shrieked, pointing at him. "Mom, shut up!" Ron yelled. "It's okay." Snape had not yelled or jumped backward, but the look on his face was one of mingled fury and horror. "Him!" he snarled, staring at Sirius, whose face showed equal dislike. "What is he doing here?" "He is here at my invitation," said Dumbledore, looking between them. "As are you, Severus. I trust you both. It is time for you to lay aside your old differences and trust each other." Harry thought Dumbledore was asking for a near miracle. Sirius and Snape were eyeing each other with the utmost loathing. "I will settle in the short term," said Dumbledore, with a bite of impatience in his voice for a lack of open hostility. "You will shake hands. You are on the same side now. Time is short, and unless the few of us who know the truth stand united, there is no hope for any of us." Very slowly, but still glaring at each other as though each wished the other nothing but ill, Sirius and Snape moved toward each other and shook hands. They let go extremely quickly. "That will do to be going on with," said Dumbledore, stepping between them once more. "Now, I have work for each of you." Fudge's attitude, though not unexpected, changes everything. "Sirius, I need you to set off at once. You are to alert Remus Lupin, Arabella Figg, Mundungus Fletcher, the old crowd. Lie low at Lupin's for a while. I will contact you there." "But," said Harry, he wanted Sirius to stay. He did not want to say goodbye again so quickly. "You will see me very soon, Harry," said Sirius, turning to him. "I promise you. But I must do what I can. You understand, don't you?" "Yeah," said Harry. "Yeah, of course I do." Sirius grasped his hand briefly, nodded to Dumbledore, transformed again into the black dog, and ran the length of the room to the door, whose handle he turned with a paw. Then he was gone. "Severus," said Dumbledore, turning to Snape, "you know what I must ask you to do. If you are ready, if you are prepared." "I am," said Snape. He looked slightly paler than usual, and his cold black eyes glittered strangely. Then, "Good luck," said Dumbledore. And he watched with a trace of apprehension on his face as Snape swept wordlessly after Sirius. It was several minutes before Dumbledore spoke again. "I must go downstairs," he said finally. "I must see the Diggories. Harry, take the rest of your potion. I will see all of you later." Harry slumped back against his pillows as Dumbledore disappeared. Hermione, Ron, and Mrs. Weasley were all looking at him. None of them spoke for a very long time. "You've got to take the rest of your potion, Harry," Mrs. Weasley said at last. Her hand nudged the sack of gold on his bedside cabinet as she reached for the bottle and the goblet. "You have a good long sleep. Try and think about something else for a while. Think about what you're going to buy with your winnings."